Myanmar, a country in Southeast Asia, boasts a rich tapestry of cultures and ethnicities. Over 135 distinct ethnic groups call this land home. Each group has its own unique traditions, languages, and beliefs. This diversity, while beautiful, has also been a source of tension and conflict throughout Myanmar's history. After gaining independence from British rule in 1948, Myanmar struggled to unite its diverse population.
Ethnic groups, particularly those in the country's border regions, felt marginalized by the central government. They longed for greater autonomy and recognition of their rights.
These tensions, simmering for years, eventually erupted into open conflict. In 1962, General Ne Win, a high-ranking military official, seized power in a bloodless coup.
Ne Win's rise marked a turning point in Myanmar's history, ushering in an era of military rule that would last for decades. The coup had a profound impact on the civil war, further entrenching divisions and intensifying the fighting.
Ne Win's government adopted a policy of Burmanization, aiming to assimilate ethnic minorities into the dominant Burma culture. Despite the military's brutal crackdown, ethnic armed groups continued to resist.
They fought for their right to self-determination, for the preservation of their cultures, and for an end to oppression.
These groups, often operating in remote and challenging terrain, became a symbol of defiance against the military regime.
Under the iron grip of the military junta, Myanmar became a pariah state. The regime, known for its brutality and corruption, silenced all forms of dissent. Freedom of speech, assembly, and the press were non-existent. Those who dared to challenge the government faced imprisonment, torture, and even death. The economy, mismanaged and crippled by sanctions, stagnated.
In the late 2000s, after decades of darkness, a glimmer of hope emerged in Myanmar. The country, long isolated and oppressed under a strict military regime, began to see the first signs of change. The streets, once filled with fear and silence, started to buzz with a cautious optimism. The military junta, facing mounting internal and external pressure, announced a series of political and economic reforms. These reforms were seen as a response to the growing discontent among the populace and the increasing scrutiny from the international community. The generals, who had ruled with an iron fist, began to loosen their grip, albeit slightly. These reforms, while limited, raised hopes for a more democratic and open society. Citizens who had long been deprived of basic freedoms began to dream of a future where their voices could be heard. Pro-democracy rallies started to gain momentum, and political discussions became more frequent and open. The air was thick with the promise of change. Aung San Suu Kyi, the daughter of Myanmar's independence hero and a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, was released from house arrest in 2010 after spending a total of 15 years in detention. Her release was not just a personal victory, but a symbol of hope for the entire nation. Suu Kyi, with her unwavering commitment to non-violence and democracy, became the beacon of the pro-democracy movement. Suu Kyi's release was a watershed moment, galvanizing the pro-democracy movement and capturing the world's attention. Her speeches, filled with hope and resilience, inspired millions both within Myanmar and around the globe. International media flocked to cover the unfolding events, and the world watched with bated breath as Myanmar stood on the brink of a new era. The journey was far from over, but the first steps towards a brighter future had been taken. On February 1st, 2021, the fragile hope for democracy in Myanmar was shattered. The country, which had been on a slow path towards democratic governance, suddenly found itself thrust back into the dark days of military rule. The world watched in shock as the events unfolded. The military, alleging widespread fraud in the 2020 elections, staged a coup d'etat, arresting Aung San Suu Kyi and other civilian leaders. These leaders had been the face of Myanmar's democratic aspirations, and their sudden detention sent ripples of fear and uncertainty throughout the nation. The military's justification for the coup was met with skepticism both domestically and internationally. The coup sparked widespread protests and condemnation from the international community. People from all corners of the globe voiced their disapproval, and governments issued statements denouncing the military's actions. The streets of Myanmar quickly filled with demonstrators, all united in their demand for the return of their elected leaders and the restoration of democracy. The military's power grab plunged Myanmar into chaos. The once hopeful nation was now a battleground of conflicting ideologies and power struggles. Daily life was disrupted and the economy began to suffer as instability took hold. The junta's heavy-handed approach only served to deepen the crisis. Peaceful protests were met with brutal force, with security forces firing live ammunition on unarmed demonstrators. The violence escalated quickly, with reports of numerous casualties and injuries. The international community watched in horror as the situation deteriorated, and calls for intervention grew louder.
The coup really ignited a wave of resistance. People from all walks of life, including students, workers, and even monks, joined the movement. The resistance was not just about opposing the military, it was about fighting for a future where their voices could be heard and their votes could count. People from all walks of life took to the streets, demanding the restoration of democracy. The diversity of the protesters was a testament to the widespread discontent with the military regime. From young students to elderly citizens, everyone had a role to play in this fight for freedom. Social media became a crucial tool for organizing and spreading information, despite the junta's attempts to control the flow of information. Platforms like Facebook and Twitter were used to coordinate protests, share real-time updates, and garner international support. The junta's efforts to shut down the internet and block social media sites only fueled the determination of the protesters, who found creative ways to bypass these restrictions and keep the world informed about their struggle.
The ongoing conflict in Myanmar has created a dire humanitarian crisis. Millions of people are in need of urgent assistance, with displacement, food insecurity, and lack of access to healthcare reaching critical levels.
The violence has forced over 1 million people to flee their homes, seeking refuge in neighboring countries or within Myanmar's borders. These internally displaced persons, or IDPs, often live in overcrowded and unsanitary conditions, lacking access to basic necessities.
The conflict has disrupted livelihoods and destroyed infrastructure, exacerbating poverty and food insecurity. The international community has condemned the military coup in Myanmar and called for the restoration of democracy. However, concrete actions have been limited and the situation on the ground continues to deteriorate.
The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, of which Myanmar is a member, has taken the lead in diplomatic efforts. However, progress has been slow, and ASEAN's efforts have been criticized for lacking teeth.
The United States, European Union, and other Western countries have imposed sanctions on the Myanmar military and its affiliated businesses. Despite the immense challenges they face, the people of Myanmar have not given up hope. The spirit of resistance remains strong, with pro-democracy activists, ethnic armed groups, and ordinary citizens continuing to fight for their rights and freedoms.
The National Unity Government, or NUG, formed by elected lawmakers ousted in the coup, is working to establish a federal democratic system that guarantees equality and self-determination for all ethnic groups.
The situation in Myanmar may seem overwhelming, with ongoing conflict and unrest affecting countless lives. The images we see on the news can be distressing, and it's easy to feel powerless in the face of such turmoil. However, there are meaningful actions that people around the world can take to make a difference. By raising awareness, supporting humanitarian efforts, and contributing to organizations that provide aid, we can help alleviate some of the suffering. Additionally, pressuring our leaders to take decisive action is crucial. Advocacy and lobbying can lead to policy changes that support peace and stability in Myanmar. Through peaceful protests and demonstrations, both locally and globally, we can show solidarity with the people of Myanmar in their struggle for peace and democracy. Every voice counts in this collective effort.
One of the most important things you can do is to stay informed about the situation in Myanmar. Read news articles from reliable sources to understand the complexities of the conflict and the needs of the people. Follow human rights organizations on social media to get updates and learn about ways you can help. These organizations often share petitions, donation links, and other actionable items. Share this information with your friends and family. Conversations about Myanmar can spark interest and concern, leading to a broader awareness and more collective action. The more people who know about the crisis, the more pressure there will be on governments to act. Global protests and public outcry can compel leaders to prioritize the issue and take meaningful steps towards resolution. Together we can make a difference.